What should have been an easy win to provide some consistency, instead it was a blown double-digit lead in the fourth quarter and another inexplicable loss. What went wrong for the Heat? We'll break it all down and to the latest trade news on today's live episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Today's episode, sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Have a lot to get to today. We've got more trade intel. We've got questions about Miami's rotation, questions about Miami's defense, but we are recording this live after the Heat lose to the Chicago Bulls in Chicago, 133-124. David, the Heat were up. They had scored 70 points in the first half. They scored 103 points through three quarters. They were up 13 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Crazy that they lost this game. Clearly, though, the offense wasn't the problem. What did you see out of the defense?
Not much. Just basically, that second rotation really struggled to try and stay in front of Chicago's ball handlers. Either it was Kobe White or even Ayo Sumo. Matas Maselis with a phenomenal game. What was he, 10 of 10 from the floor? He was ridiculously good in this game. And they were getting tough looks in some cases, and they were able to knock those down. And conversely, I will say that while the defense was a problem, I think Miami was shooting poorly. And I think you look at Tyler Hero, he struggled mightily. Terry Rozier struggled as well. Like, they were just not consistent in being able to put up points, especially in the fourth quarter when they needed to, with the exception of Bam Adebayo, who seems to have turned a corner and kind of realized, oh yeah, I am an all-star. Like, the rest of the team really struggled in the fourth, and they just weren't able to get anything done. And I don't know. I mean, I think Kel'el Ware was out for most of the fourth quarter. He finally came back in, and they had a semblance of defense to kind of retake the lead or at least keep it close. And then just wasn't enough. So they wound up making some bad plays and some bad decisions on the stretch. A lot of turnovers too, sloppy play. Chicago, as they pointed out in the broadcast, not a team that forces a lot of turnovers, and yet Miami couldn't seem to keep their hands on the ball. They
weren't forcing any turnovers.
Yeah, they did. It was Miami.
It was unforced errors, right, from the Heat. And Tyler Hero, you remember, was it 2 years ago where Tyler Hero had a month where he kept stepping out of bounds?
I don't recall that, but it seems familiar. I mean, it's happened with a lot of players in Heat history.
Yeah, there was just like a month where he stepped out of bounds in like 3 straight games or something. And this reminded me of that. I was like, all of a sudden, Tyler Hero had butterfingers. He just couldn't hold on to the ball all of a sudden. I was like, this is so strange what's happening. Miami turned the ball over 3 times, to your point, in the fourth quarter. Chicago turned it over 0 times. Miami scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. I think the defense was an issue for the first 3 quarters, and then the offense was the issue in the fourth quarter. And I don't want to give any credit to the Chicago Bulls. Like, they didn't do anything. It really was just unforced errors by Miami, whether it was the turnovers, the missed shots. You mentioned 1 for 9 from 3-point range in that fourth quarter. A really rough game from Tyler Hero, shooting-wise. I thought he did his best to impact the game in other ways. I thought the pick-and-roll stuff with him was a fulcrum of the offense for most of the game, and an effective one. But this roster really needs Tyler Hero to make shots. Like, there's no other substitution for it. Duncan Robinson, especially when he only plays 10 minutes in this game. We've got some rotation questions later on, but I thought Alejandro Solana, who does a great job doing the Heat radio stuff, pointed this out on Twitter. Duncan was on the injury report with a hip injury, I think it was. Yeah. And maybe that's something that flared up, because he played well in the first 10 minutes. It wasn't like he was playing poorly. So maybe that's just something that flared up, and then he just wasn't able to go back into the game. Again, other rotation concerns that we'll get to here later. But I thought, in addition to the problematic shooting in the fourth quarter, I also didn't love the defensive performance in this game. And I think Kel'el Ware was exposed a little bit. This was, to me, a step back for Ware in this game. There were a number of times defensively. Offensively, he was fine. Defensively, this was a major step back, and this was a weird lineup. Chicago comes out, they start 4 centers or 4 point guards and a center. That's their starting lineup, and then they kind of get into that second unit, and then they go big with like Jalen Smith, Patrick Williams, and then the rookie that they got, who's also like 6'10". So Buzelis. So
Yeah.
they kind of were running out these funky lineups and stuff, and it just felt like Kel'el had a hard time grasping what was going on out there. And then there was a series in the fourth quarter where he literally just got turned around and was just completely in the wrong spot, and Chicago got a wide open layup. I'm not trying to put this all on Ware, but I thought he took a step back in this one defensively.
Yeah, I think they used a pick and roll pretty effectively, and
Yeah.
Chicago's credit, and again, I'm begrudgingly giving them credit. Like Nikola Vucevic is as skilled a center as you're going to get, really. And while he struggled early, like I think he was a little bit more impactful in the fourth. He's a sharp passer, so if he was stymied at the rim or in the painted area, he was able to make a pass. He also hit a 3 in the fourth. Not so fulcrum, but I think helped grease the wheels a little bit. But then between Giddey, he was able to get to the paint pretty much. And then eventually they subbed out Terry, brought back Jaime, who was providing a little bit more size, who could challenge a player like Giddey. But then Kobe White caught fire. There was one play there where it was a complete miscommunication, and Kobe White just drove past, I think it was Tyler on the perimeter, and there was nobody in the painted area. Both Bam and Kel'el had been drawn out by their respective defensive assignments.
That was the one I was talking about where Ware got turned around. He should have that was the situation where Ware was supposed to just go back into drop, and he just got completely turned around. So it was a good call.
Yeah. So there were a couple of plays there. The pick and roll, I think, was really effective for Chicago late in the game, and they were able to get a lot of points, especially when a guy like Buzelis was shooting as well as he did. But everybody else seemed to catch fire on the Chicago side too. So I don't know. The defensive lapses are concerning because this is not the kind of typical Heat team. But before they go on this road trip, we talked about it. They were going to lose a game that they probably should have won. Turns out it was this one against Chicago. This was a game. So now they go into a back-to-back against Philadelphia. Who knows what that situation is like? And I know we'll probably talk about it a little bit later. A game that they probably should lose. Hey, I'd pencil tomorrow. If you're going to look to make a wager, tomorrow is a surefire victory because they have no chance of winning it. So they'll probably find a way to win it.
Well, Philadelphia played tonight too, so they'll be playing on the second night of back-to-back.
Sure,
Joel
but they're at
played
home
in
at
this
least.
one, and maybe he won't play in the next one. Embiid had a triple-double in this game, but didn't look especially great defensively. The other part of this too that's disappointing, Miami had won 3 of 4 games going into this game, and we're back into the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. There was an opportunity here to win 4 of their last 5. This is going to drop them, I think, back into the play-in mix. Now, look, you don't want to necessarily live on the standings day to day, but there was an opportunity here to put a good stretch together without Jimmy Butler. On the positive note, Bam is really coming along. And I thought he made some tough shots in this game. This is after we never even talked about the game winner in San Antonio. What a phenomenal moment for him. And without Jimmy Butler, my question, and with Tyler Hero struggling shooting wise, 5 of 15, 3 of 11 from 3-point range, different guys kind of stepped up in each of the quarters except for the fourth quarter, right? I've got Duncan and Kel'el were kind of the guys in the first quarter. Jaime and Jovic were the guys in the second quarter. Bam and Tyler. The third quarter was Tyler's best quarter. It was Bam and Tyler in the third quarter, and then Jovic kind of had another little spurt at the end of the third quarter there. That's kind of what it's going to take to be good offensively, unless something dramatic happens at the deadline where Miami's able to get some sort of other consistent scoring threat there, whose name might rhyme with Devin Durant or something. I don't know. Just who knows? But
floating it out there.
Just an idea. That's what they're going to need. I thought offensively, this was kind of it in the third quarter. And I thought Jaime played really well. This was a nice Jaime game. He finished with, I don't even know what he finished with, 14 points on 4 of 8 shooting, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. I love the 5 assists. I thought he did a really good job collapsing the defense, spraying out the shooters, getting into the paint, getting 2 feet kind of under the rim a lot. That's the Jaime that Miami needs.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid game. I think Nico had also a really good game, 20 points and 7 of 10 shooting. Maybe a couple of defensive miscues there. He missed a free throw down to stretch. But, honestly, there are a lot of good, solid performances all around. I think you can look at 2 players as basically pretty responsible for this. I think Terry Rozier going 2 of 12 and Tyler Hero going 5 of 15.
Yep.
You look at that, and that's the ball game
That
right
might be
there.
it.
You cannot have those guys go 7 of 27 from the floor. That's below 25% shooting
Yep.
between the two of them. And I mean, that's just that's supposed to be the bulk of your offense. Tyler's a starter, Terry is your bench player. And look, Tyler, at least to his credit, was able to get to the line 11 times and hit 10 of those free throws. But we expect more. And he's had a couple rough games now. He can be defended a little bit. I don't know if he's had any kind of lingering injury issues or anything like that, because he's been so consistent as
the
a
defenses are keying in on him, man. They had Chicago doesn't flush with awesome defenders, but they do have some longish guys that were just sort of draped all over them. And when you don't have another threat out there, another perimeter threat out there, especially with Duncan a little limited in this one, it's really difficult for him to kind of get loose. But there was one coaching decision that I want to talk about, and that may have cost the Heat the game. I'll tell you what it is after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You're looking for your tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or maybe even a game of some kind. Finding the right tickets at the right price can be a headache, but with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while. It's really easy. You grab a super deal for a prime seat, and you can't believe the value. It's such a steal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before you even hit buy, you can see exactly what your seat is going to look like in any venue, whether you've been there before or not. It's really reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, anywhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. We got a lot of questions about the rotation from our listener questions later on. We're going to address them, though, here because I think they need a whole segment. We're going to talk about Terry Rozier. 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. Haywood Highsmith didn't play at all. David, I think that decision may have cost Miami the game. I don't understand the logic there by Erik Spoelstra. Rozier did not play well at all. It wasn't like he was coming off of a strong third quarter. I thought Haywood Highsmith, look, he only had 5 points in the game. He wasn't great offensively, but he played almost 21 minutes in this game in the first three quarters because he got 0 minutes in the fourth quarter. He plays 21 minutes in the first three quarters, and it's not like Miami had a problem scoring anyway. Everybody else was handling that. I thought they desperately needed Haywood Highsmith in that fourth quarter because they got shredded. You mentioned the play earlier where Kobe White got to the basket, kind of getting past their defense. That was on the bigs, but it was time after time. Whether it was Kobe White, Josh Giddey was getting to the basket whenever he wanted. I really thought they needed Haywood Highsmith's defense in this game. He was a +4, the only starter with a +/. I thought he was good. And yet, I can't, it's inexplicable. What's the reason to play Haywood Highsmith over Terry Rozier in the fourth quarter? And there's a bunch of stuff too. Like, is Duncan limited? Did he just get benched? I don't know. You never know with Erik Spoelstra. Duncan is in and out of the doghouse all the time. And then you've got Jaime only getting a few minutes. Why wasn't he playing more than Terry Rozier when maybe you could have used his size? I just don't understand the infatuation with playing Rozier at the end of these games, especially when he's not playing well.
I think part of the reason, and again, I'm supposing this, and I don't know if Erik is going to be asked about it after the game or not, but with the defense keying in on Tyler, the threat of Terry Rozier as a ball handler or somebody who can draw defenders away from the perimeter might open things up for him. Another ball handler, another shot creator. But part of the rationale behind that is, well, Terry's got to score or else he's not much of a threat. You can just kind of put one person on him and be like, okay, that's fine. Go ahead and put up your step back three or whatever off balance jumper you're going to take, or maybe another missed shot at the rim. So it doesn't work. It's only in theory that you could put a ball handler out there that's going to take away pressure from Tyler to allow him to get some more wide open looks or allow him to create a little bit more easy offense for himself. And if that's the case, I just don't get it. Because again, with Nico, with Jaime, even with Bam, like, I mean, they're much more trusted offensive players at this point than Terry Rozier, and that's enough to create a balance there. You don't need him out there. You need defense, especially when Rozier, Hero, etc., is being cooked by Giddey, DeSunmo, etc. So you just got to be able to find some way of not playing him. And look, to people in the comments already saying, oh, they're kind of showcasing him to trade him. It's like, no, it's not going to make any difference. Like, this is hurting their case, if anything. And
right, especially when he's playing poorly. Again, he didn't play well in the first 3 quarters and then just kind of stunk up the bed in the fourth quarter. This was a guy who wasn't playing well at all. Take him out. If you want to trade him, don't let anybody see him. That's how you showcase. Like,
he's been so good behind the scenes. He's putting in so much work behind the scenes.
You and I also talk about this all the time, where this idea of showcasing a player like 24 hours, 48 hours before the deadline is ridiculous. The people know what these players are. They're not. There's not going to be a scout in Chicago calling the front office like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this Rozier kid? Pretty good. Maybe we should trade for him. I wonder. Look up his salary. What's he making?" I think what you're getting at Rozier. I know you're not defending Erik Spoelstra's decision. You're trying to You're trying to find the rationale behind it, and it's the same rationale that I gave people when Jimmy Butler was suspended the first time. Was why is Rozier starting over Duncan Robinson? I never agreed with it, but trying to understand, like, Erik Spoelstra does everything for a reason, right? He's not just picking names out of a hat when he's choosing his starting lineups. So what would the reasoning be? You nailed it. It's because they want another ball handler out there. But Nico plays 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. He should be another ball handler for you. I think the Heat need to empower him more. When they empower Nico to handle the ball, good things tend to happen, especially in a game against a fast-paced team like Chicago. It feels like that's the place where Nico should thrive. In fact, he did in the first half when he was kind of running some breaks and running some high-low pick-and-roll stuff with Bam and Kel'el and all that kind of stuff. So,
why isn't Bam running the point? Like, I mean, we've seen him kind of flourish in late-game situations where he does that, where he brings the ball up, especially if you've got a slow-footed center. I mean, who are they going to send to defend him at 40 feet out? Vucevic, he's not going to pick up Bam full court. Patrick Williams, they don't have an option there. So, I mean, I
thought Bam played one of his best regular season games in a long time. Miami's last home game where he was running the point. He was point Bam. And they haven't quite gotten back to it in that way ever since. So is it the shooting with Duncan limited? Did Erik Spoelstra decide, I'm just going to go with Rozier? That's probably part of it too. But look, I would bet that Erik Spoelstra is going to go back, watch the film, look at that decision, and be like, yeah, I probably made a mistake there. And maybe the Duncan Robinson. That's why I do think I would love to get a quote on Duncan Robinson, why he didn't play. But based on everything that we're seeing right now, I would bet he was limited by the injury, and maybe that just threw off Erik Spoelstra's rotations and what he had planned for this game. But
he's got to be able to adjust a little bit better.
No, it's inexcusable. I'm not excusing. It's absolutely inexcusable. I want to zoom out on this topic a little bit though. This is also the problem when you don't know your closing five. You don't know your best 5 players. You don't know your top lineup. Good teams have an A lineup and they have a B lineup. Really good teams will have a C lineup. I don't think the Heat have an A lineup. Like, they don't have a number one lineup, a closing lineup that they can go to all the time. And friend of the show, Rohan Nadkarni, points this out all the time. And I think it's a very astute thing to point out. And I think when you go with the hot hand approach, when you make the wrong read, like Erik Spoelstra did in this game, it backfires. Yeah. Whereas if you just know your best 5 players and you feel really comfortable with it, and you're just going to go with it and you're going to stick with it outside of adverse conditions or a real hot hand or somebody getting in foul trouble, that's the benefit of knowing your best 5 and sticking with it. And this is the issue of not knowing it. This is the side effect. This is what it looks like when it backfires, David.
Who are the best 5?
I don't know.
Tyler, Bam,
that's the problem.
Nico, sometimes.
I don't know.
Where? Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I mean, Jaime sometimes. Like, it's just, there's too many players there. And like we made a case earlier, and I think you're absolutely right in saying that Haywood Highsmith should have played. Like,
I think Haywood
whose minutes does he take up?
I think 3 people should be. I think you should put 3 people in pen. I think it should be with Jimmy Butler out. It should be. Yes. It should be Tyler, Bam, and Haywood. Because Haywood is the best perimeter defender by a mile on this team, and you need that at the end. Then figure out the other 2 spots.
That's fair.
And I don't know who those 2 spots are.
As long as one of them's not being filled by Terry Rozier, I think we can
Correct.
again be pretty assured that that's not an option moving forward. Like he should not be playing fourth quarter minutes, especially in a close game.
Go Ware, go Duncan, go Nico. If you don't want to go if you don't want to go with the two bigs, go Bam, Nico, Jaime. I don't know, but pick something, stick with it, go with it. I know easier said than done though, because I don't know who Miami's best 5 players are, and this is why Erik Spoelstra is doing it. So it's not just a coaching thing; it's a roster thing as well. We've got listener questions coming up, including the latest on Jimmy Butler and the NBA trade deadline. Something could be brewing. It's coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid, but what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, well, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills. It empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. And therapy also provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists for whatever reason, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Let's get into some of the listener questions. Thanks to everybody who sent in listener questions within our Locked On Heat Insider community on Subtext. If you want to join, you could do so with the link in the show notes. You get first dibs at asking these questions for the post-game shows. And if you've been a member of that, we've been sharing all of our NBA trade deadline intel, stuff that we've reported, our reading between the lines, reading the tea leaves, plus all the national reports. So you don't have to go digging for that stuff online. Only a few more hours before the NBA trade deadline, Thursday, 3 p.m. It's free for 14 days. Literally, you could just join right now, and you get all of the stuff that we share, stuff that we don't even share on this show or on Twitter, right there. Just do it. It doesn't, just do it right now. It doesn't make sense. Just do it. Jonah writes in, before we get to some of this trade deadline stuff, David, I'm going to tee you up here with Jonah's question. Jonah is actually going to tee you up here. Why does Spo refuse to challenge anything? Question mark, 2 exclamation points. You texted me about this during the game, so you're teed up.
I don't know. We've talked about it kind of jokingly, and I don't know how much of a joke it is really. It just somehow it feels like it's a tool that he refuses to yield because it takes away from what he perceives to be the integrity of the game. It seems like a joking statement, but we know what a stickler Spo is, the way he loves the mud games, the grinded out games. Those are the kinds of things he loves. He always feels and just saying, you know what, don't spend less time worrying about the foul and more time worrying about how you can come back from this and expecting somebody to step up in that particular moment. And I think that's what it is. Rather than go through the process of challenging it and then, having lost perhaps a timeout in certain situations, he'd rather just say, you know what, they hit the free throws. Who cares? That's not the point here. The point is to continue to play better and fight your way through this kind of adversity. So
remind me what the play was again.
Kel'el Ware got called for a foul, Patrick Williams, and it was clear that it was probably just a block. And although Eric Reed said maybe they got a body on him or made contact body to body, I didn't see enough contact there. I thought it was
enough to at least challenge it. There was like a minute left at that point, and you're down.
You're down 3, I think.
Yeah, you were. So you're threatening to be a 2 possession. Maybe it was a 3 possession game. I'm with you. And the Heat only had 2 timeouts in that moment. With a minute left, maybe Erik Spoelstra wanted to have the 2 timeouts. 2 timeouts with a minute left is about right. But that doesn't pass the sniff test because Erik Spoelstra never challenges it. And if you're going to challenge something in that moment where it'd be one thing if it was a 1-point game and then he was going to go to the line for 2. And it's like, all right, it's still technically a 1-possession game. But when it's starting to become multiple possessions, that's a situation where you just challenge it.
Where are the stats on the challenges? Cleaning the glass? Like I want to see
I
because
forget where they used to have them. The NBA used to keep them, and I haven't been able to find them for a couple of years because I don't know if the coaches complained or something. But it's
they didn't want
I don't
that
know where Erik
transparency.
Spoelstra would rank. I think he would probably Erik Spoelstra would rank dead last in the league
And
in
usage.
total challenges used. So
For sure.
And at that point, the sample size would be too small to get anything out of in terms of his win percentage on him. But I think it also goes hand in hand with the Heat. Also make it a point. They instruct their players, don't complain about the officiating. If you're not getting back on defense because you're complaining about a call, you're in the doghouse. That's going to be a problem with us. So I think all of this stuff goes hand in hand. Is this Erik Spoelstra trying to set an example? Like this is his version of not complaining to the refs. Just move on and get on to the next play. But he needs to challenge it. He needs to challenge it. Nobody likes it. The NBA should get rid of challenges. I've been on that. It slows the game down. I don't think it materially changes these games. I think it just turns into a talking point for talk shows like ours. But if it is there, just use it. Nobody likes it. We are not going to be mad at you for it existing, Erik Spoelstra, but just use it because we can get mad at you if you're not going to use it. Dave writes in, how can we fix the defense? Here's my take on the defense. I don't think it's been wholly bad. I do know that the Heat want it to be a lot better. Sure. I think that was a key part of making the decision to start Kel'el Ware alongside Bam Adebayo. It was, hey, we've got a pretty tough ceiling, a hard ceiling, especially with Jimmy Butler playing the way he's been playing and not being engaged and now being suspended. We got a pretty hard ceiling on what we can be offensively. The Heat want to be elite defensively. In terms of how they can fix it, playing Haywood Highsmith in the fourth quarter would help. But it's going to take more than that. I just think that this roster, look at the roster. Tyler Hero, minus defender. Duncan Robinson, minus defender. Terry Rozier, minus defender. Nikola Jovic, kind of hit or miss. He's got good days, he's got bad days. Jaime Jaquez, minus defender. Alec Burks, minus defender. There's 3 positive defenders in the rotation tonight. And I thought Kel'el Ware, like I said, took a step back, so it's hard to even call him a total positive. You've got 2 consistent defenders in your night-to-night rotation. Haywood Highsmith and Bam Adebayo. No coaching is going to fix this defense. There's only so much coaching that Erik Spoelstra can do. It's almost a miracle that this is a top 10 defense. And I said the same thing last year, that was a top 10 defense. You look at the personnel, there's no reason for this to be a top 10 defense. And yet Erik Spoelstra keeps getting a top 10 defense out of this group. If you have anything to add there, if not, we can move on to the trade stuff.
No, I'm looking up the coaching challenges. According to StatMuse, Erik Spoelstra ranks 17th with 24 1 challenges, and he's got a percentage. I don't know what his percentage is of that, but it feels incredibly high. I can't believe that.
Malachi writes in, why does this Heat team struggle so much in the second half? I always comes down to this. It's the lack of consistency. It's a lack of consistency in the rotation. I think, and when I say a lack of consistency, it's the same thing as saying it's a lack of talent. I just think it's a lack of talent. I think this team is dialed in to start games because they're really well coached. And that stuff tends to wear off as the game goes on.
Yeah. You can't effort your way past better talent or comparable talent in some cases. Because, any team in this league can catch fire or go on a run. And we saw a Chicago team that's not very good. They're playing at home. They feel a little comfortable. And next thing you know, even down 13, even with what would be I think a clear lack of talent there, they can still find a way to just eke out enough points and set you back, and you can't respond. And that's what we saw in tonight's game.
So we got 4 different questions, probably more if I look back on the insider community here about the trade deadline. So Tiffany writes in, why are we not getting Kevin Durant instead of Golden State? Zay writes in, sell me on Andrew Wiggins on the Heat if we acquire him. Pook writes in, hard to focus on the game. Wes and David, could you please give us all your latest trade intel and predictions for the Heat and the league for the deadline? Kevin writes in, how do you envision Andrew Wiggins fitting in on this team if that deal goes through? We've got Zach Lowe tweeting mysterious things about, hey, the league is talking about Kevin Durant tonight. It's 11:13 p.m. Eastern time when we're recording this. I don't know if there's a midnight 1 a.m. trade going to happen where Kevin Durant moves teams here, but it seems like a lot of people are talking about Kevin Durant. Does that mean that Jimmy Butler has moved to Phoenix still? Does that mean that Jimmy Butler has moved elsewhere? Does that just mean that Kevin Durant goes to Golden State and Miami's just left over here with figuring out what to do to Jimmy Butler at that point? I don't know. I don't know. You've got that Arizona radio host. What's his name? Gambino? Gambano? The great
Gambino.
Bambino? Gamboto?
Yeah, Gambo, Gambo, yeah, Gambo, yeah, Gambodoro.
John Gambadoro tweeting that he can't rule out a swap of KD for Jimmy Butler, which seems crazy to me. Here's his latest tweet. The KD to Golden State has taken on a life of its own in the last 24 hours. Look, I do not know for sure, so not reporting. I did talk to several teams today that heard the same thing. One told me he will most likely end up in Golden State with Butler to Phoenix. We'll keep digging. That would be pretty remarkable. So a Butler, Jimmy's still going to Phoenix because presumably the Suns would just try to make the most out of a post Kevin Durant. I can't imagine why they would be interested in Jimmy Butler. I guess because they're out of options. And if Jimmy goes to Phoenix and Durant goes to Golden State, does all that stuff from Golden State, Andrew Wiggins, etc., then go to Miami? That seems like the likely outcome then. If that's the deal, TBD on whether or not that actually happens here. I still have my whatever TBD to see if that's the actual deal.
Yeah, I don't know how to break it down. We keep hearing a lot of rumbling. I think more than in years past, because maybe it's just the Luka move. And I feel like also we're kind of discounting the fact that Anthony Davis was part of that deal. It's just the idea of trading Luka has just changed the perception of what a trade looks like, because that was largely a player that was viewed as untouchable, and clearly that was not the case. And so you're hearing a lot of rumblings about different players, like Chris Middleton going for Kyle Kuzma. I think I saw that as a potential deal. It's just Toronto being a player to kind of help grease some potential deals with other teams, like Orlando emerging as a potential threat to lure Jimmy. Like I don't know how any of these things are going to work out. There's a lot of scuttle, a lot of noise, but it's more so than it has been in years past. It just feels like this is a much more active trade deadline. So I wouldn't be surprised if anything happens, because we've already seen the inexplicable. We've already seen something that
Kevin Garnett, anything is possible. Like this is the world we live in now, man. Like it's absolutely crazy. The other version of that is that Kevin Durant goes to Miami, Jimmy Butler goes to Golden State, and then the Golden State stuff goes to Phoenix. I think all of this stuff is still on the table. And I think Jimmy Butler coming out via Chris Haynes and saying, I'll accept a trade anywhere, even if it's not Phoenix, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here. Yeah. That is meaningful. That's a meaningful thing that happens. That is a Jimmy Butler signaling to teams that are not Phoenix, hey, if the Suns can't pull this off, I still need to get out of Miami. I'll probably play for you. And again, the sniff test part of this, and nothing that the Suns have done has passed the sniff test, so maybe this doesn't even count with Phoenix because they're just runs in such a crazy way. But the sniff test part of this would be, why on earth would you want Jimmy Butler? Why would Kevin Durant ask out? Well, if Kevin Durant asks out and now you're trading him away, why on earth would you want Jimmy Butler? Because now it's Beal, Butler, Booker, and that team ain't good enough. Because you still have the problem is Beal. The problem is that Beal is the third guy. And if Durant, Booker, Beal wasn't good enough, then Butler, Booker, Beal is not going to be good enough. So absolutely. That's the part of this that doesn't pass the sniff test to me. Yeah, and if you're Golden State and you've talked about this entire time, we don't want to mortgage our future and all these things, you're going to give all that stuff up for Durant? And then that stuff goes to Miami?
Yeah, at least there's a comfort level there. Like, I mean, and assuming that you can acquire Durant, I think, obviously accepting him back into the fold would probably be a lot more seamless than any other, well, probably even more so than the acquisition of Jimmy. Sure. And maybe, again, we've talked about too, there's a lot of posturing going on here. It's like, oh, you know what? If we can't get Jimmy, say in Golden State from their perspective, if we can't get Jimmy, we'll just get KD back. So, you better up your deal or be willing to take whatever we're offering you. And that's as good as a deal as you're going to get. So, I just think a lot of teams are positioning themselves. I don't expect anything to happen today. My gut tells me this, and I don't know anything. I don't think anybody's as many more plugged in at this point than anybody else because we're just all hearing rumors. My thought is that something's going to shake loose finally the day of the trade deadline. And then once that happens, once that first domino falls, then we're going to see everybody else kind of follow suit. It's like, oh, okay, they made that move. then this is the next step. And that is the next step. And everybody's going to be just sending their deals in at the last second. And we're going to see a flurry of movement right before
Worth
the
noting
deadline
here that
comes.
Dennis Schroeder is eligible to be aggregated in a trade in it's 11:18 right now. Do the math for me. In 50 minutes, 52 minutes.
Yeah,
42
minutes.
minutes. 42 minutes.
Yeah.
God.
Midnight tonight.
Yes. So
wait, is it midnight Eastern or midnight West Coast time? Because he plays for the Golden State Warriors.
Good question. Not
3
sure
hours
and
42 minutes.
So yeah,
No,
3 hours and 42 minutes. I just got a Twitter notification. Is it anything? No. Nope. All right. Sorry if the Kevin Durant trade goes down or Jimmy Butler trade goes down or whatever, but that's the recap for tonight's loss in Chicago. We will have plenty more episodes to come before the deadline, around the deadline, after the deadline. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast